What's up guys, Old Stuff and Fluff here, and today I've got something a little different for you, because today is June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day, which occurred on June 6, 1944. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to play the opening battle of Call of Duty, at least until I get tired of it, and I am going to comment on the accuracy of what I'm seeing, because in real life, I actually have a history degree. I specialize in World War II history, I write about World War II history, and I work on a World War II memorial. I don't consider myself an expert, but I'm much more of an expert than a lot of the people they put on TV and claim as experts. So we're going to do this. Alright, so first things first, June 6, 1944, D-Day. This was the invasion of Europe, Operation Overlord. It was joint American, Canadian, and British, and the French and the Polish were also involved in to a lesser degree. There are three main beaches.
June 6, 1944. D-Day. We're invading Normandy. About to take France back from the Nazis.
Thank you. Does that guy sound like Bill Clinton? Alright, there were 5 beaches in Normandy. There was Omaha and Utah were both American beaches. Golden Sword were for the Brits, and Juno was done by the Canadians. The Polish and the French contributions were smaller in scale, but they still participated and they did their part. Alright, I don't know if this is a real radio broadcast or not, but it sure sounds like it. You see those standards the Germans are carrying? Those are modeled after the Eagle standards from the Roman Empire. And here you see what looks to me like Mark IV tanks, kind of the mainstay of a German Panzer Grenadier regiment. Most people would think they are Tiger tanks, but those aren't. They're too small to be Tigers, and the front barrel of a Tiger looks different than that. This part would have taken place earlier. This looks like they're hearkening to the Blitzkrieg, where, not the Blitzkrieg, the Blitz, where the German Luftwaffe was bombing Britain, trying to get the civilian population to freak out and demand that their government surrender, which didn't happen. In fact, it made the civilian population more eager to defeat Germany. And then, of course, we see our recruiting office, and now our eager American gung-ho boys going out there. Sorry, I'm stopping to listen. Okay, I don't remember this exact radio speech, but I have no doubt that this one's an authentic speech by FDR. He did so many of them in what was called his fireside broadcast. It's a good idea of his. He would routinely get on the radio and talk to the American people personally. Built up a lot of trust in the government at the time. Looks like we're fast forwarding to the Battle of the Bulge here. Yep. Exciting stuff. So this game, Call of Duty, focuses on the Big Red 1. That's the 1st Infantry Division, which is one of the Army divisions in World War II that served in the European theater and took a huge amount of casualties. They were in a lot of stuff.
Wish you could see this, brother. We're invading some frog beach I'm not supposed to even know the name of.
Frog is a nickname Americans and Brits use for the French. Kind of unfair. It harkens to the fact that I guess some French cuisine has frog legs in it, but if you ever been down south, Americans eat frog legs too.
What the hell do you want my watch for? You're the captain of the goddamn football team.
Alright, so here we are on our troop ship.
Buddies in basic, and they're all on the boat with me.
Actually, this part looks pretty accurate. You got the red lighting in the background, which is used on the ship so that people who are moving around can see what they're doing, but folks who are trying to sleep can sleep. The decks are kind of a red linoleum, which was standard as well. The racks they have are chain racks. You have like a little steel frame with canvas stretched out, suspended on chains from the overhead. The way they're arranged looks pretty authentic as well. These guys just kind of screwing around to kill time. That's pretty normal too. When D-Day actually happened, these guys would have been stuck on this troop ship, basically sitting still in an English harbor for a few weeks before the invasion actually began, because the invasion kept getting delayed due to bad weather. So what we got here? We got at least one guy who's Catholic. He's carrying his St. Michael's medal.
Okay.
What you have there is a K-bar, or whatever the Army calls it. The Marines call it the K-bar. But that was actually standard issue in World War II to the man in the squad who's issued the Browning automatic rifle. Browning automatic rifle is a lightweight infantry machine gun, which was used to pin down enemy troops so that the riflemen could get close and then shoot them with their
That's not what
rifles.
she said last night.
But because the
No,
Browning
they could
automatic
shoot for
rifle
6.
does not have a lug on the end of it so you can mount a bayonet, the infantryman who carries the BAR was issued a knife Browning automatic rifle, or a K-bar. That was his little personal sidearm in case you ever end up in a hand-to-hand fight.
I got us covered, Daniels. Don't worry about it.
There, let's see what's
Briefing's
going
about
on.
to start. What the hell
Ooh,
you
the big
boys
scary
doing?
sergeant.
And there's Sergeant Pearson.
The funny thing is,
got
that
this,
guy would
Daniels.
probably be 28 years old, and yet his hair is already going white. I've actually read accounts of soldiers in World War II, and other wars for that matter, whose hair went prematurely white just from being under sustained stress.
We embark on an operation
And of course, that's not limited
unparalleled
to war.
importance
You can usually
to
pick that.
establish a beachhead at Normandy.
Normal people who are under sustained stress have weird things happen to their bodies like that. Alright, this part looks very inaccurate to me. Not so much what the ships look like or this address, but when it's happening. The sun is already up. On June 6th, these guys would not be standing on the deck when the sun comes up. They would already be in their landing craft, and they've probably been in their landing craft for a couple of hours at this point. Going round and round the boat, waiting for the moment when it's just bright enough that they can hit the beach.
Colonel Davis sure can give a nice speech.
You see him going down this netting here. That's very much accurate. The only part that's missing here is how much the boat would be rocking and rolling, and how much that craft down there is going up and down. So you have to time it just right so you don't fall in the water or smack your leg and injure yourself before the invasion even begins. These guys would have to practice this repeatedly for weeks ahead of time, because it actually does take some skill to get it right. It's an easy thing to get wrong, and you don't want people getting this wrong because they're doing it for the first time on the day of.
I wanted to be like
So you see the netting on top of their helmets. That was accurate to World War II. It's something that the Americans and the British did. I don't know of any other armies that really did this. Oh, I think the Japanese did too. It was so that you can basically pin foliage into your helmet, so you get a little extra camouflage with that. You also notice the grenade that was hanging onto his collar had like a little yellow ring at the
Wait
top.
till we hit Paris.
That was accurate too. That is, let me
off.
see, what was that? I think that's an M2,
Remember,
M21.
No digging in at the shore. Gotta advance.
I've actually forgotten the designation, but it's a
Stay low
fragmentation
and do
grenade.
not bunch up.
Before World War II,
Your
the
training,
standard
you're gonna make it
fragmentation
through.
grenade would be painted completely
I'm proud
yellow.
to lead you fellas
But
to
of course, that makes an
Anytime,
infantryman who's trying to hide in the
anywhere.
bushes easy to pick out. There's a great big yellow thing strapped to his chest. So instead, what they did when World War II was they started painting them gray and black at first, and eventually they settled on olive drab since it blends in the best. But they still left a little yellow tab at the very top to indicate that one's the fragmentation as opposed to practice grenade,
Sure thing.
which would probably be painted either red or blue in World War II. Oh, it's beginning. Alright, so you see how there were two, I didn't even pay attention. It looked like two .30 calibers mounted on the back of this landing craft. The Army was still using these type of Higgins boats that opened up in the front like that, and as memorialized, or as made famous in Saving Private Ryan, the second that ramp goes down the front, if you're facing the enemy, they can shoot you. You're just lined up like cattle to the slaughter at that point. This far into the war, in 1944 in the Pacific, the Marines had already given up on these boats, and they'd switched to something that would have those supporting machine guns mounted in the front of the boat, and there was no ramp in the front. Instead, when the boat came ashore, it actually had tracks on the bottom, so it could dig its way fairly far up the beach, and then all the infantrymen inside would flop their way over the side of the boat, instead of having to run directly into machine gun fire like this thing had to do. One of the downsides to having the machine guns in the back is they can't provide very good supporting fire when the boat's bouncing around and infantrymen are sticking their heads up and down. You might accidentally shoot one of your own men in the back of the head. So here we go. Confusion reigns. The ramp is down and everybody's just getting shot before they can even move off the boat. So that's why that boat's gone out of style. In fact, last time I checked, the Amtraks the Marines still use are you run out the back, not out the front. Alright, this part's looks like they carbon copied it from Saving Private Ryan.
Get your head down and keep moving.
Alright, so you see the vertical white stripe on the back of that guy's helmet, or you briefly saw it a moment ago. That would indicate that he's an officer. The point of that was so that
Take the Bangalore and get to the
for
Seawall.
this very reason, when you're running into the heat of battle, the infantrymen can spot from behind who's the officer, and non-commissioned officers would have a horizontal white stripe, so they know who's the leaders in this group. And meanwhile, the Germans who are shooting at them can't quite tell because there's not much indication from the front as to who the officer is. Typically for snipers and pretty much all other infantry, there's a sort of a priority list of who to shoot at first, and the officer is at the top of the list. After that, radio man. After that, non-commissioned officers, machine gunners, anybody with some kind of heavy weapon. The standard rifleman, like the main character in this game is way at the bottom of the list. Now I see he's taking cover behind these little triangular-shaped metal things. It's part of Rommel's Atlantic Wall, where he completely fortified this area. You also see these vertical posts. They were nicknamed Rommel's Asparagus. What these things are tank traps and landing craft traps. The D-Day invasion, which you see here, and also in real life, happened at low tide, so all these traps were completely exposed. Oh, I'm down. I didn't even make it all the way up to the seawall. Oh, that's very upsetting. Oh, goody, I'm resurrected, yay. Alright, so anyway, back to these tank traps. The idea was anytime the tide is in, these things would be ever so slightly underwater, and if the landing craft come in, they would get their hulls ripped out on the bottom of these steel traps, and the vertical ones are actually wooden posts. They're about 3 to 5 meters, and the Germans actually put a lot of effort into this. They hydraulically pounded them into the ground before this invasion began. They would also string them together with tripwires and mount shells, mines, and fragmentation grenades on the top of them. The fragmentation grenades was when nothing else was available, but the point wasn't to take out infantrymen like you see here. It was to help destroy tanks and landing craft when they're coming ashore. Yay, I made it to the seawall, yay. Now in real life, this beach was Easy Red. That's what the Big Red 1 attacked. The 16th RCT, a Big Red 1, landed at Easy Red. And that was one of the... Omaha Beach was the worst of the 5 beaches to land on that day. And on Omaha Beach, there were different sectors. Saving Private Ryan focuses on the 2nd Ranger Battalion landing on Dog Green Sector, which was one of the 2 worst places to land on Omaha Beach. And the Big Red 1, the 16th RCT, Big Red 1, landed on Dog Green Sector, which is this right here. Oh, I'm sorry. I said Dog Green twice. 16th RCT landed on Easy Red. This is Easy Red Beach. Saving Private Ryan was at Dog Green. Oh, I'm down again. I barely made it past the wire. So anyway, as I was talking, from what you see here... I'm sorry, something was distracting me. From what you see here, he just blew up the wire with a Bangalore torpedo, which was those little tubes filled with TNT. You'd have probably an entire squad of men carrying each one little section of it, and they'd assemble it along the way, shove it underneath the wire. The idea wasn't to shove it under the wire like they did, and like they did in Saving Private Ryan, but shove it horizontal, like so it's parallel to the wire and goes underneath it, so you can blow up a huge section of wire at once. And the Amtraks the Marine Corps uses now actually have a modernized version of this, or at least they did the last time I checked, where they would fire something like the Bangalore torpedo out the front with a rocket. It'd be like a long bit of explosive cord that shoots out the front and then blows up anything that's in the way. Oh, and as you see, I just killed one of my own people. Didn't mean to. That was just a fog of war thing. Anyway, that's a... gosh, I just ran over top of my own grenade. That's another big problem. I almost blew myself up with my grenade. Those fragmentation grenades kind of made famous in the movies for you pull the pin and you have 3 seconds. It was actually more like 4 to 5 seconds, but 3 seconds is good enough. And there was a moment in one of the final episodes of Band of Brothers where a combat-hardened veteran actually did blow himself up he threw a grenade and immediately ran right over top of it. So that's an easy mistake to make as well. As you see, I just made it in this game. Luckily it's a video game, so I'm none the worse for wear. Now, as far as the design of this trench line goes, I do not remember the exact layout of the trench lines in the German fortifications on Omaha Beach in the Dog Green sector. But sorry, Easy Red. I'm going to be confusing those for a while now. In the Easy Red sector, this is Easy Red in this video game. So I don't remember the exact layout, but this all looks pretty authentic to me. I guess the only critique I would have so far is that they were probably a little more spread out than what this game is portraying. But it's fine because it's a video game, and also, I don't actually know. I'm just surmising at this point. But I do know that the main target of the 16th RCT at Easy Red was an exit, which my little avatar is about to run up right now. It's a little pathway through all the sand dunes. As you can see, the Germans already have a road here with several little sandbox places, specifically because they already knew this was going to be a target. And in real life, at Easy Red and also at Dog Green, where Saving Private Ryan takes place, the Germans knew that this was the vital target, that when the landings occur, this is what the Americans or the Brits or whoever else comes ashore right here is going to be trying to capture. It's not just going to be everybody just runs ashore and captures some random spot in the dunes. What we're trying to capture is a spot that cuts through the dunes. You could call it the cut, you could call it exits. They call them both. Typically, the officers refer to them as exits over the radio. Exit 1, Exit 2, Exit 3. Exit 1 would be the most important one to capture, which you hear Tom Hanks yelling about in Saving Private Ryan. But these were the main cuts through the dunes that had to be captured if we're going to push this invasion home. It's not enough to just capture some dunes. You actually have to be able to exploit the territory that you just captured. All these military operations, sadly, most people would be a little upset to hear this, but sadly a lot of it comes down to a great big trucking operation. You send the stormtroopers ashore to what's happening in this game, and you know, all the glory that Colonel, like Dale died, I forgot his name. All the glory that the silver-haired Colonel was telling these guys a little earlier in this video. Yeah, that's what these guys are doing now, but the ultimate objective is capture this exit route from the beach. So then you can unload all the tanks and the trucks and the reinforcements and the medical supplies and the food and the ammo and the typewriters and the nurses and so on and so forth. And they all have to be able to get off the beach. So you need these exits if this beach is actually going to be worth anything. Without the exits, everybody who dies on this beach was dying for nothing. So it makes sense that the Germans put a lot more stuff near the exits. I know they did it in real life, so I'm going to give the game a big old pass on that. I'm pretty sure they hadn't only put this much stuff in this game right here, not for a historical authenticity, but just because it's more exciting. But I think it has some historical authenticity behind it as well. Now let's move on to some weapons. My guy's been running around with the M1 Garand, what a lot of people would argue is one of the best infantry rifles of all time. Certainly the best infantry rifle of World War II. And it is pretty authentic looking, except for this sight arrangement. I've used the M1 Garand many times now, and the back sight doesn't look that smooth and rounded. And the front sight is actually a lot bigger when you're actually looking through the sights. The whole point is the front sight with those little curved posts, like the one vertical post in the middle and the two curved posts on the side, will fill up the whole back sight ring. But otherwise, it sounds accurate. The one big thing they messed up on this game is, like all first-person shooters, they give you the option of reloading. Ah, redemption! I accidentally shot one of my guys before in the fog of war, but that time I saved one of my guys. I shot the right bad guy. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, like all first-person shooters, one of the big things that comes up is you always seem to have the option of reloading. Now that makes sense if you're using like an M16 and you fire away half your magazine and decide to put a fresh magazine in. Yeah, that's certainly an option. You end up with, in real life, you'd end up with a bunch of half-loaded magazines in your magazine belt. Did I make it? Did I make it? Oh, I made it! Ha ha ha! Got him. But you can't do that with an M1 Garand. That's one of the big drawbacks of the M1 Garand rifle, and it wasn't big enough drawback that I think anybody actually cared about it. But with the clip that you have for an M1 Garand, it holds 8 rounds in it, 4 on one side and 4 on the other. You shove it into the top like you see me doing every time I try and reload. But in real life, if you've only fired away 4 rounds, there's still 4 rounds left in your rifle. You can't just shove another clip full of 8 rounds on top of that. You'd have to pull the slide back over and over again to unload each of the 4 rounds that are still in there before you can put a fresh clip in. And there is no such thing as a half-loaded clip. With the M1 Garand rifle, it's either 8 rounds in that clip, or you just have a bunch of sloppy rounds falling out of the clip. It doesn't work that way. For the normal magazines you put into like an M16 or an AK-47 or even the BAR, you could load them with 1 round if you wanted to. That's fine. It's kind of stupid to do that, but you can do it. But you can't do that with the clip on an M1 Garand. It's either 8 rounds or 0 rounds, one or the other. It doesn't work with 1 rounds or 7 rounds. One or the other. And of course you see me patching myself up underway. It always cracks me up with the first-person shooters. I do know there are some first-person shooters out there that try to eliminate that immortality thing that you get with using med packs. So as you see, you got your flamethrower guy right there.
I'm going in!
That was a real thing too. We actually used flamethrowers in World War II, and much better than you see here is Saving Private Ryan. The way they used the flamethrower there was pitch perfect accurate from what I've read and from what survivors have told me. It's not just me reading and watching documentaries. I've actually talked to a lot of World War II survivors who lived through this. Saving Private Ryan got it right, and they also got right the fact that the guys who were carrying the flamethrowers were great big were ticking time bombs. They had a habit of exploding as soon as one tracer round hit them. And for that reason, a lot of people stayed as far away as they could from the guys with the flamethrowers. But yeah, the way Saving Private Ryan did it, you had the infantrymen gather up behind the pillbox, throw a whole bunch of grenades, not one grenade. They threw as many grenades as they could in, and after the grenades exploded, the guy with the flamethrower ran in and blew the place up. Now you see that cross on there? That was standard German Wehrmacht cross. That predates World War II and postdates it. As far as I know, they still use the cross. As you see now, I'm not using my M1 Garand because I ran out of ammo, so I grabbed an enemy weapon, the PPSH, which is actually a Soviet-made small machine gun, typically carried by Soviet officers and non-coms, especially their NKVD. You could use it for clearing trenches, sure enough, but the NKVD like to use it to keep all their unhappy troops moving forward. Anybody who turned around and tried to run away was quickly gunned down by the PPSH. The reason why the German troops would have it here is actually historically accurate. The German troops that were guarding a good chunk of the Atlantic Wall were not German at all. They were Eastern Europeans. In fact, in one case, I think there was an entire Soviet division that had surrendered to the German army and specifically asked to fight for Germany. Not because they had any particular love of Hitler or the Nazis. It was more along the lines of they had a hatred of Stalin. So a lot of these Eastern Europeans, including Poles, Lithuanians, Romanians, Czechs, or Czechoslovakians at the time, a lot of them ended up actually volunteering to fight for the Wehrmacht. And in some cases, a lot of them just got conscripted because the Wehrmacht had occupied their territory. And in some cases, it was folks who had been captured in combat and were given the choice of either starving to death in prison or being conscripted into the German army, and they chose to fight for the German army. A lot of them chose to do that because they thought they'd be used in the Russian front, and they hated Stalin a lot more than they hated Hitler. But the German army wasn't dumb enough to send them out there. They were afraid that a lot of these people from Eastern Europe would just as soon surrender to the Russians if you sent them out to the Russian front. So they sent them to the Western front to face off with the Americans and the Brits. So a lot of the people that we actually fought at Normandy were Eastern Europeans. And that's why you got these PPSHs floating around down here. Also, Saving Private Ryan made note of this. I think most people missed this, but there was a scene where two Germans, or two guys in German uniforms, are trying to surrender to the Americans after the battle was pretty much ended, and the Americans just casually gunned them down. Most people remember the fact that the Americans just murdered two people who were trying to surrender. The interesting thing is the who were trying to surrender were speaking Czech, and what they were saying in Czech was, "Please don't shoot. I'm not German. I'm Czech." Ah!
We gotta move. I got you.
Now I'm guessing this is just smoke that's out here, not gas.
We can get down here.
I have not read many accounts of any gas attacks in World War II. The only one I actually remember reading about was a Japanese gas attack on some Chinese targets in the Pacific Theater. I think by convention, or just by unspoken agreement, a lot of the armies in World War II just decided that they weren't going to use gas on each other. Just because of the horrible experiences everyone remembered from World War I. Cutting each other in half with machine gun, heavy artillery, bombing, firebombing, flamethrowers, stabbings, beating each other with helmets. I guess they were willing to accept that, but they drew the line at gas attacks. As FDR once said, you see somebody coughing up their lungs one time, and that horrific image will just stick with you forever. Alright, so here we see a morphine syringe, and that's actually the right color for them. I didn't quite catch a view. It looked like there was a plastic cover on it, which wouldn't have been accurate. The morphine syringes that were issued to all the infantrymen in their little med kits had kind of like a little glass tube cover over the needle portion. You take the glass tube cover off, there'd be a little wire cover on top of the end of the needle, which you then had to rip off. And you wouldn't just stab it straight down into someone's muscle tissue like that. You actually had to insert it at a shallow angle, just like they do if you ever go give blood.
Help me.
Or if you've ever had an IV. But typically, the guys who were wounded were expected to stick themselves with that. Though I'm sure your buddy would always be ready to help you with that one if you're too badly hurt.
Listen up. There's a GPF cannon by the
But one thing that they missed, though, was you don't just fling the thing to the side after you're done with it. You're actually supposed to tie the empty morphine syringe to the guy's collar so that everybody else knows this guy's already had morphine. Do not stick him again. You can't trust somebody who's hopped up on morphine to remind everyone, don't stick me with morphine. Especially since he might fall asleep or something. So what they did was tie it to you. Well, anyway, we're getting to the end of what I bothered to film, so I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks for watching. Remember, it's June 6th. This is the anniversary of D-Day. This was the Big Red one at Easy Red. I'm Old Stuff and Fluff, signing off.